The age of dying stars. The end of the galaxy did not arrive with fire. It arrived with silence. Stars did not explode or scream as they died. They simply grew tired. Their light weakened over millions of years, fusion slowing as the universe stretched thinner, colder, and more indifferent. Once brilliant constellations faded into darkness, leaving behind black dwarfs and invisible gravity scars where suns had burned for eons. Civilizations followed their stars into extinction. The Trell Dominion was the first to fall. Their cities, built in radiant rings around massive blue giants, were abandoned when those stars expanded and consumed their inner systems. The Trell had believed themselves eternal, until their sky turned red, then black. The Vayari consensus lasted longer. Masters of stellar engineering, they siphoned energy from dying suns and collapsed stars alike. For a time, they believed they had beaten entropy itself. But even stolen fire runs out. Their final transmission spoke not of defeat, but confusion. The Koth ascendancy chose a different path. They abandoned flesh entirely, uploading their minds into vast computational realms. They survived the death of their stars, but not the decay of memory. Bit by bit, their digital soul fragmented, until nothing coherent remained. The galaxy grew quieter with each passing era. The Galactic Archive continued its work long after anyone believed it mattered. Created to preserve knowledge across civilizations, it now served as a ledger of endings. Species after species were catalogued with the same cold precision. Extinct. Among these entries was a familiar name. Humanity. The humans had once expanded rapidly, driven by ambition and fear in equal measure. Their lives were short, their emotions volatile, their politics chaotic. They fought wars among themselves even as the universe quietly prepared their extinction. Their empire had relied on stars, bright, stable, temporary things. When Sol began its long decline, historians assumed humanity would fade like all the others. Records showed internal collapse, resource strain, and philosophical despair. The final conclusion was inevitable. Humanity, presumed extinct. No one questioned it. Why would they? The humans had not been the strongest species, nor the most advanced. They had not reshaped galaxies or rewritten physical laws. They had simply lived loudly and briefly, like sparks against an uncaring dark. As interstellar travel failed and communication across the galaxy slowed to a crawl, the archive prepared for its own shutdown. There were few civilizations left to record, fewer still who could read the records. It was during this final era, known later as a long dusk, that an anomaly appeared. A signal, so faint it was almost lost in the cosmic background. So old its origin predated the collapse of half the galaxy. And yet, it persisted. It did not come from a star system. It came from the void between galaxies. And for the first time in countless eras, the archive recorded something new. The last archives. Archivist Sailfra had catalogued extinction for most of her long life. She knew the sound of a dying civilization, not the screams, but the silence that followed. So when the anomaly appeared in the Galactic Archive sensors, she felt something she had not felt in thousands of years. Uncertainty. The signal was weak, stretched thin by cosmic expansion, yet unmistakably structured. It adjusted its frequency in response to background radiation, correcting for distortion as if it expected interference. This was no echo, no automated remnant. It was deliberate. The archive's machine custodians disagreed. Statistical ghosts were common in the long dusk, fragments of ancient broadcasts warped by time. The machine flagged the signal, logged it, and moved on. Sailfra did not. She initiated a manual trace, following the signal's origin beyond the galaxy's fading spiral arms. The journey took centuries in relative time, longer still in real space, as faster-than-light corridors collapsed into instability. At last, they crossed into the void between galaxies, a region once thought entirely empty. It was not empty. Drifting in the darkness was a structure so vast it barely registered against the cosmic background. It emitted no light, no radiation, no obvious power signature. Instead, it absorbed energy, matching the temperature of the void itself. Only its precise geometry betrayed its artificial nature. As the archive vessel approached, the structure reacted. Passages unfolded. Docking apertures aligned themselves without a single transmission exchanged. The structure had recognized them. Inside, Sailfra found an archive unlike any she had studied. There were no grand halls, no monuments, no displays of dominance. The design was minimalist, almost humble. Data was not stored in isolated vaults, but woven throughout the structure itself, encoded in quantum lattices, biological matrices, and self-repairing memory loops. This archive was alive. It did not merely preserve information. It remembered. Sailfra accessed the outer layers and froze. Civilizations long erased from galactic history were present here. Complete cultural records, languages, philosophies, even simulated consciousness models. Species the archive had listed as irretrievably lost were preserved with astonishing care. Then she reached a designation she recognized. Origin species. Human. Her frills tightened in disbelief. Humans were extinct. The records were clear. Their decline, fragmentation, and presumed end were well documented. She vocalized a challenge aloud, more to steady herself than to accuse. Humanity is extinct. The archive responded instantly, translating itself into a language with impossible precision. Correction. Humanity persists. The system identified itself as a custodial continuum, a human origin construct designed to operate beyond stellar timescales. It did not claim to rule territory or command fleets. Its purpose was singular and absolute: preservation. As Sailfra delved deeper, she realized the truth was far more unsettling than simple survival. Humanity had not left behind ruins. They had left behind infrastructure. The galaxy had assumed humans vanished. In reality, they had simply gone somewhere no one thought to look. Into the dark. The truth of the human empire. The deeper archivist Sailfra ventured into the custodial continuum, the more the galaxy's history unraveled. This was not a tomb. It was a network. Human record revealed no final evacuation, no desperate escape from dying stars. Instead, there were centuries of careful transition, quiet decisions made long before extinction became inevitable. When humans realized stars were temporary, they stopped building civilizations around them. They dismantled central capitals. They abandoned planetary dependency. They redesigned society itself. Humanity had learned from every empire that fell before them. Species that clung to worlds perished with those worlds. Species that tied identity to territory vanished when borders dissolved. Humans chose something else. They chose continuity. There was no single human empire anymore, not in the traditional sense. No throne to shatter, no capital to burn. What existed instead was a distributed civilization spread across artificial habitats, rogue planets, and deep void structures anchored to dark matter currents. Human governance had become time-resistant. Decisions were not made for decades, but for millennia. Leadership rotated across generations and, eventually, across states of consciousness. Some humans lived biologically. Others existed as stored minds. Many transitioned between the two as needed. They did not fear change. They engineered for it. Energy systems drew power from sources most civilizations never considered: background radiation, quantum fluctuations, and the slow decay of matter itself. Human technology was not impressive by the standards of the Golden Age. It was patient. Humans did not outrun entropy. They walked alongside it. Most unsettling to Sailfra was humanity's treatment of memory. Other species recorded history as static data, archives to be sealed and preserved. Humans treated memory as a living responsibility. Records were constantly reviewed, retold, and recontextualized. Human children were raised on stories of extinction, not to frighten them, but to teach humility. Victory was not celebrated. Survival was respected. The custodial continuum existed for a single purpose: to ensure that nothing meaningful was truly lost. Entire civilizations were preserved here, not as frozen relics, but as evolving models. Their languages adapted. Their philosophies were debated by human scholars long after their creators were gone. Humans had made themselves custodians of a dying universe. They did not do it out of dominance or moral superiority. The records were clear on that point. Humanity did it because they understood something others had missed. Extinction was inevitable, but erasure was optional. Sailfra finally understood the great misconception. The galaxy believed humans vanished because their borders disappeared, their signals faded, and their stars went dark. In truth, humanity had simply changed the scale of its existence. They no longer announced themselves to the cosmos. They waited for the universe to grow quiet enough that memory would matter more than power. The human empire had not survived by being the strongest. It had survived by being the most patient. When the universe went dark, the last star did not die in fire. It dimmed. Across the observable universe, the final fusion reactions slowed and failed. No light replaced them. No success ignited. The age of stars ended not with an explosion, but with a gradual surrender to cold. Darkness followed. Not emptiness, stillness. In that stillness, human systems awakened. Across intergalactic space, the custodial continuum synchronized without signals. There was no need for communication. Human constructs had been designed to think in rhythms measured against eternity itself. Dormant minds emerged from cycles of sleep lasting millions of years, finding the universe exactly as expected. Quiet. The archives were reviewed. Every civilization that had ever reached the stars was accounted for, not as names on a list, but as preserved histories, languages, philosophies, art, and failures carefully woven into living memory. Humanity did not rank them. There was no hierarchy of worth. All stories mattered. Archivists Sailfra observed the process as her own biological time ran short. The continuum offered her preservation, not immortality, but inclusion. Her thoughts, perspectives, and final reflections were recorded with the same care given to entire empires. She accepted. As her consciousness faded into the archive, she left one final observation, translated into human language and encoded permanently among the records. All empires sought eternity through power. Humanity achieved it through patience. Humanity did not celebrate being lost. There were no monuments raised, no declarations made. Instead, the continuum adapted once more. With starlight gone, human technology shifted to deeper sources of endurance, energy drawn from proton decay, from quantum variance, from the slow heartbeat of matter itself. Thought slowed. Civilization became quieter. Purpose narrowed. Humanity's final role was not to conquer a dark universe, but to witness it. They remembered the first suns. They remembered the rise of life. They remembered every species that had ever looked up at the stars and wondered. The universe forgot itself. Galaxies drifted beyond contact. Time lost urgency. Cause and effect stretched thin across eternity. There was no one left to measure history, except humanity. In the endless dark, human minds endured, not as rulers, not as gods, but as custodians of existence itself. They carried the universe within them, long after the universe could no longer carry light. The human empire did not outlive the stars by force. It outlived them by understanding something no other civilization ever truly accepted. Everything ends, but meaning does not have to. And so, in the silence after creation, when even darkness grew old, humanity remained, quiet, unseen, undefeated. Not because they conquered the universe, but because they remembered it.